Welcome to Fandom Night, the show that can only have 3 lemons on the screen at each time. I'm William Bush, Reploid Bill, and some games die out too early. Some games get in there and they grab your attention. Whether it be RPGs, platformers, shooters, whatnot, sometimes we only get one. And in an industry that is absolutely obsessed with releasing as many games as it possibly can, Final Fantasy 15 is coming out. So, how come some games just completely die and never even get one single sequel? That's what we're on today. Games that deserve a sequel. Now, this is gonna be mixed here. Air Guys, God Bless the Ring. Now, I say that this needs a sequel, but technically speaking, if we really get into it, it already had one. I mean, Dissidia is kind of another fighting game, but this was more along the lines of being an actual fighting game, playing along the lines of something like Tekken. And to me, that's more interesting. I think that this game, today, would be great. Like, it would be neat to see Cloud, Lightning, Squall, Sabin in one game where it's an actual fighting game. And I just think it would be good. I really do. I feel like this is one of those games that's underappreciated. And even though this game does show its age today, I feel like a new version should not be out of the question.
Skies of Arcadia has always been one of my favorite RPGs, and I remember, like, the reason why it hit me is because I remember hanging out with a buddy of mine back when he still had his Dreamcast, and we sat up all night playing the game. Like, we would take turns passing it off. And once it finally got ported to the GameCube so I could actually sit down and play it again, I, like, just played the hell out of the game. I mean, played it and played it and played it and played it. It is your standard 40-hour RPG. I'm pretty sure I beat the game like over 80 times. And it always bothered me once you get to the end, the fact that there is no sequel to know. Like, it still ends the normal, oh, and the good guys saved the day and good things happen. But I always wanted to know, like, what happened to some of the other characters and how did everything change, and I just wanted to see what would end, you know, what actually happens. Because you always get to those points in games where it's like, yeah, the good guys saved the day. Okay, but they're still in a chaotic world. They saved the day, but that's not going to change the fact that there's a jackass over there that's going to loot, and then there's a guy that's over there that just wants to slap people. Like, I want to play the game again, but this time I want to know what the hell happens afterwards.
Now, when I was trying to figure out a game that should have had a sequel, I thought it did at first, but then again, it was just a remake. And the game? Conquerors Bad Fur Day. Now, Conquerors Bad Fur Day was an over-the-top, actually graphically awesome Nintendo 64 game. And of course it had its usual adult content, and it did have a good multiplayer function to it, but Rare was developing a sequel called Conquer's Other Bad Day. But before they got a chance to get any further, Microsoft bought them out. So what did they do instead? They remade it and called it Conquer Live and Reloaded. I think it's Reloaded or Unloaded. But after that, all we had was more or less the Xbox game Conquer's Live and Reloaded, until recently, Conquer was teased for this Project Spark game for the Xbox One. But yeah, this is one of those rare games, and I do mean that rare games that should have had a sequel, but never did.
Alright, when we're talking about games that probably definitely need a sequel, fighting games normally wouldn't be in there because the market is flooded with constant sequels and remakes and rehashes of certain fighting games. Looking at you, Street Fighter. But there are those rare ones that they actually had a decent story or a funny gimmick to it that you really just want to see more of. Evil Zone for the PS1. This game played a lot like multiple animes thrown together, but in a fighting game sense. The mechanics were pretty easy to get a hold of. You were able to do traps on characters as grabs instead of just running up and grabbing people. So you had to constantly be on the lookout for that. And it was just a really solid game. It had a really funny storyline. Every single time you went into a new fight in the story mode, you had, depending on which character you were, you had like this coming or next episode type of thing that you would see in an anime. And some of the cutscenes for the game were just really well done. So this, I'm surprised this game has not been picked up by somebody else, seeming the company that did make it, which was Titus, really just isn't around anymore.
One of my favorite games of all time that needed to have a sequel but never got a sequel, that they should get on the ball and make a damn sequel, is right here, Legend of Dragoon. Legend of Dragoon is, like I said, one of my favorite RPGs of all time. It was one of the first games that I played that had voice acting, the ability to transform into Dragoons. It had a really good story. I liked how the battle system was, where you had to constantly hit the X button to chain attacks. That is why I believe that this deserves a sequel, because it is one of the best RPGs ever made. My opinion, make a sequel. I'm out.
Okay, my next game I want to bring up is Heavenly Sword. Heavenly Sword is one of those games, it's kind of like God of War, but actually I really enjoyed this game. I like the fact that the sword was actually 3 different weapons. It could be this really heavy weapon, or it could be kind of like a mid-weapon, like where she was just kind of swinging it around like an actual blade, but then she could actually take it and turn it into this wild chained craziness. And the thing that always got me about it is God of War gets remake after remake after remake, and it gets sequel after sequel after sequel, and Heavenly Sword, they tried it one time and they were like, that's enough. But I don't feel like it is enough. I feel like this could have been a really cool series, and the coolest thing about it is that unlike God of War, where you kind of have to have that main character that just goes every time, the main character of the game is the sword. Entire nations are doing battle over this one weapon, and at each game somebody in a different era, a different time could get a hold of this weapon, and you could follow its lineage all the way up. I feel like they're really missing out on something with this. This needs a sequel.
So my next choice for a possible sequel for a game is not going to be this bullshit. Mortal Kombat Shaolin Monks. Now this was an awesome game that had co-op and was able to explore the lore and the more or less worlds of Mortal Kombat. And on top of that, you could actually design the code combinations for fatalities. Now this would have been a cool idea for a sequel if they explored it with Sonya Blade and Jax, let alone with some of the other characters from other worlds. I mean, they could have even tried the bad guy route and maybe tried it with like Melina or Baraka. But yeah, this could have had a sequel, and I think they could still have a market out there for a sequel.
Another game that deserves a sequel would be right here, Catherine. What made Catherine really interesting was the fact that it was a puzzle-based game. The main character, Vincent, had nightmares of him with sheep horns, running around with a pillow and in his boxers, climbing towers. It's actually quite difficult after a while. It can get real hard trying to, because you got only so much time as the tower collapses and everything. But I really believe that they could do a sequel with the same with a female character, and with the female character would be the same thing as what Vincent's going through. Vincent is struggling between 2 women, both named Catherine, one with a K, one with a C. Figuring out which one, does he want to stick with his girlfriend, Catherine with the K, or does he want to move to Catherine with the C? He doesn't. He's fighting with himself, and a sequel could actually be with a female, with, you know, her fighting between two men, wondering what she should do, what she should not do, and the dream sequences and stuff, the tower climbing, you could change it up a bit. She doesn't have to be, you know, she doesn't have to have sheep horns. It doesn't have to be sheep. It could be something else. I don't know, but let's hope that Atlas decides to make a sequel. But as of right now, there is none, and I haven't heard about any, so that sucks.
So this game right here. Now, while yes, it has multiple games, BioWare did a damn good job, and in fact, you see it in all their other games. With Jade Empire, it was the original. Now, everybody remembers KOTOR, everybody remembers the fact that, you know, oh, well, they done sat down and came out with the Mass Effect games and all that other. Yeah, but this was the original. The original, you pick what you want to say, you do what you're going to do, and that pretty much determines the outcome of the game. And I really do want to see another Jade Empire. I want to see what it is they do after you beat the Master, or whether the, you know, whether you end up being good or evil. They did a damn good job with Mass Effect in deciding whether, if, you know, you're good, this happens, or if you're bad, that happens, and the choices you make. Why can't they go back and redo this? You know, if you go through the entire arena and deal with all of the side arc of oh, what's his face? The big burly guy that you end up getting. If you end up dealing with his side quest, you know, what does that do? What happens if you end up, like, getting all the machine parts when you go into oh, it's not quite a dream world, but you know what I mean. It's supposed to be like the other side, heaven, hell type deal. Like, what happens if you do all that? What happens if you decide to actually go down the entire closed fist? Can you actually start learning closed fist? What happens if you go open palm? Can you learn new open palm? Like, what can you do? What comes of it? What, you know, you could close down the dam to that village and make it so that way then none of the boats get out. Do all the pirates become assholes? You can open it up and let them go through. You know, now that the trading's in and out, how well does, you know, the village flourish? Once again, it's another one of those games where I just want to see what would actually happen. And now they can go back and redo it and show you what actually happens.
Alright, another great game that a lot of people probably passed up unless you were very bored when you were a kid and happened to own an NES and gave this game a shot. Caveman games. We see all these different Olympic games nowadays. Why can't we get another one of these? I want to see a sequel to this with different games, not just pole vault over the T-Rex, or hammer throw the wife, or the saber-toothed tiger race, or start fire. I want to see some other Caveman games. There's plenty out there that they could do. And this would be hilarious to see as an actual have a sequel.
Alright, so those were a couple games from the past, and actually also from the present, that really truly need sequels. Kind of forgotten games that really just need to come back. And I hope that we've kind of given you some ideas, some things to look forward to, and maybe some things to hope for, because maybe if we can get the conversation going, maybe we could see some of these games in the future. I'm gonna get out of here.